everybody, Dutch Sense here. 3:56 p.m. Central Time on Monday, January 19th, 2015. And I've got you looking at Earthquake 3D here, which is a USGS feed of the most recent earthquakes. And I want to draw your attention to some major activity that's been going on over the last 48 hours. Now right now we're just looking at the last 48 hours of 4.0 and greater internationally and 2.5 and greater in the US. And I want to show you first the 5.0s over the last 48 hours. The entire West Pacific has moved from, let's say, the far West Pacific near Sumatra and Indonesia all the way east to north of Fiji, and then north through China, through Russia, and extending to a 5.8 borderline 6.0 that struck in the Aleutian Island chain in Alaska. Then you skip the United States, North America, Central America, and most of South America, and we go down to south of South America, where we have two more 5.0s on either side of South America, Mid-Atlantic Ridge, South Mid-Atlantic near the Solomon Islands, and a 5.2 over here near Easter Island region. And then right in the middle of the region, right along the fault line, we have a 5.0 on the coast of Chile. One lone earthquake out here in the middle of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, 5.2, and then back up here to the North Pole, south of Svalbard. And that's that 5.5 and a 5.0 struck back to back. And that's subsea as well along the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. If you zoom in here, you'll see the Mid-Atlantic Ridge actually goes all the way up here to the North Pole and extends all the way down here to the South Pole. So when we see movement occur from the South Pole to the North Pole in a 48-hour period at 5.0 or greater, it really lets you know things are moving. So let's take this down all the way and we'll look at the U.S. earthquakes, and you'll see a couple clusters right here. Now, of course, the cluster at the fracking operation here in Oklahoma has culminated now with a 4.2 earthquake over the past several hours. I think it was about 8 hours ago. Let's get the stats on this. Okay, 4.5 miles deep. That's slightly deeper than the normal fracking depth of that 3.1 mile range. But let's go ahead and put the coordinates in from the USGS so we can actually see what's there. There is no doubt that these are man-made induced seismicity, if you will, where they're injecting wastewater down into the ground to fracture the earth out, and that releases natural gas. So, okay, so we've got a very large lake here, Great Salt Plains Lake, and look what's right next to the Great Salt Plains Lake, guys. A wastewater injection well, and we're talking multiples here across the street. Another one of the earthquake. Let's get a line measurement tool on this. Now, they could have actually built more wells since then. This is last year's imagery. 1 mile away. Okay, 1.32 miles away. And we got another one up here. 1.4 miles away. 1.39. Well, there you go. I mean, that, settles it. It lets you know earthquakes are occurring at these man-made pumping operations, and there's no doubt that the pressure that's coming is coming from an area to the north. Wow, we just had another 2.9 in Oklahoma. Let's go take a look at that one. Okay, there it is. 3.1 miles deep, 5 km, and let's pull the coordinates on that. And the reason I even look these up anymore, it's pretty much a guaranteed scientific fact. The USGS has confirmed it. I mean, what more do we need? But the reason I still look these up, this lets us know where to watch in the future for possible movement, okay? So let's just take a look, see what's in the area, see if we have any fracking operations. And you can usually tell them, I mean, unless they're older and overgrown, you can usually spot them from far away. All right, there we go. Here's our oil well, and it's just from side, so you can't really see it too well, but that's a typical oil well. So that's guaranteed. And look what we have just right here. Another series of frac wells. Wonder if we have a street level view on this. No street level view. But then again, this is kind of out in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma. Okay, so that that's just right there. I'm sure there's more. Want to zoom in on the area? Here's another one right here. All right, so these pads aren't as big as the other pads, the newer pads that they've built. So these are maybe a few years old. Let's see if there's any right there. Oh, There we go. There's one right there. How far away is that? We're talking right on top of the earthquake epicenter, pretty much. Is there anything in what about these? Okay, we got houses, a couple grain silos over here. And you can usually tell the grain silos because they have a pointy top to them, whereas the frac wells have a flat top to their cylindrical containers. So let's get a quick measurement on that. That seems to be the closest one. Okay, so right here, let's do our line measurement tool in miles. 0.66 miles. What is that in feet? 3,400 feet away. All right, so there you go. And that's just popping off as I'm doing the earthquake. There's more and more happening there. This is just the last 48 hours of earthquakes here, and that's fracking induced. Also, earthquake swarm-wise, Salton Sea. The Salton Sea volcano. Yes, right where we were watching over the last several days, I issued that 3-day warning. And at the end of day 2, yesterday, you can see these earthquakes occurred just to the west of Salton Sea. If you're not familiar with what Salton Sea is, it is a volcano. Yes, a volcano, and that's in Southern California. It's confirmed to have erupted less than 5 to 7,000 years ago, so it's relatively young. And USGS has marked it, of course. These are parts of a butte. Okay, here's the earthquake epicenter. And here's the volcano. And USGS has that marked as volcanic buttes, which are small mounds that rise out of the edge of fault lines. And below the mounds are magma chambers, sometimes fairly large, which can be displaced when an earthquake occurs. So if there's activity around the area like we're seeing here, it's a sign that the magma chambers beneath Salton Sea are being perturbed. I'm going to put a link down below this video that you can watch. It's the mainstream media reporting on the possibility of an eruption of this volcano in particular. And they talk about how if it occurs during a Santa Ana, that it'll blow the ash from here over to Los Angeles, possibly down here to San Diego. They're worried that it could blow down here or up here if the wind conditions are right. That's to let you know how much they're discussing the possibility of an eruption. And there's no shock. I mean, we're talking about volcanoes in the region, and if there's movement of this level happening globally, then the volcanoes, of course, are going to move. Now, 3.1 here in Arizona. Again, guys, Arizona named it out as an area that we need to watch for possible movement. Not too often do we see earthquakes in Arizona, so when you do see them, and we're talking about them occurring in a certain area, and look at the depth on this, guys. Look at the depth. Surface earthquake in Arizona. Again, this is displacement that's occurring. This is the entire edge of the North American plate is being displaced from the west, and it's putting pressure along the edge of the North American craton, producing earthquakes directly upon the edge. Now let me show you the earthquakes over the last 7 days. See this? 4.2 up here along the northeastern edge, the exact split along the edge of the plate, which you can see here on the map, goes right up here through Canada and even goes out to sea. That split moved this past week on top of the earthquakes now that have fallen off the map from Connecticut. A swarm happened in Connecticut, which the mainstream news did a whole report on. So the whole edge of the plate was displaced over the last 7 days from the northwest to the southeast, down through the Midwest here, and then back up to the northeast. The whole thing. Now let's back this out and look at the movement globally. And you can see up here, these multiple swarms are accompanied by 5.0 earthquakes, which extended down the ridge all the way to down here last week. And when I saw the 5.0s happening here, here, and here, and further south down here, I issued a warning for Connecticut here and southeast Quebec for possible movement. So East Coast got the movement, Quebec got the movement also hit at Salton Sea where we were expecting it to, and Arizona. Why? Because the pressure is building from the west. One last time, guys. Pressure comes from the northwest and is pushing down to the southeast. This turns all of geology on its head. All of it. And if they deny it, like they did this past week, I'll put a link down below to their denial. Again, yes, they are denying that earthquakes are related over distances, and they are denying that earthquakes are coming from the west to the east. Still, Why? I don't know. Look at the activity to the west. You can see, you can even trace the earthquakes back as they spill across the Pacific over here towards the southeast and go across the plate and then displace the plate back up here to the northeast. Doesn't take a genius to see it. Also, one other thing, swarms in Hawaii. This is a relatively new development. Hawaii with the volcanic activity, but the Puna lava flow is starting to pick back up again. Is there any wonder? Look at the amount of earthquakes happening to the west-southwest of Kilauea. So, okay, guys, and internationally, gosh, this could be a whole nother video that I do on international earthquakes, because if we look at the last 48 hours, like I was telling you, this West Pacific movement lets you know. It really lets you know that things are accelerating. When we start to see the deeper earthquakes, the higher these are off the planet, the deeper they are into the Earth. This is an earthquake 3D feature, so you can tell the depths on earthquakes. You can see these really deep earthquakes here. As you guys know, or at least my viewers and readers know, that when we see these earthquakes happen at a 350-mile depth, and that's where these are occurring, around 350 miles, that's a disturbance in the asthenosphere. And the asthenosphere is an area of semi-melted magma right below the plates that the plates rest on top of. So if we start to see multiple earthquakes here, and you can see that they're equidistantly spaced almost across the planet, this is some kind of movement happening very deep in the Earth that's showing, over the last week, happening at multiple areas around the Pacific. So the whole Pacific plate down below at 350 miles or so has had multiple earthquakes. That then displaces the rest of the plate, and we see it followed up with events like the multiple 5.0s that happened over the past 2 to 3 days. Let me again show those to you. And take this back to 3 days, 2 days. All right, that's a lot of movement to see occur. But look where it's occurring. It's occurring in between the areas where we saw the deep movement. Right? So deep movement here, and that deep movement up here, and in between the areas, heavy displacement in that 5.0 range. Now that means, look at what's moved all the way in the east to the far west and then back up to the north towards Japan. That lets you know that the area in between, somewhere where there's been silence, again, somewhere in between the areas where we've already had movement, will have larger movement to compensate for all these 5.0s happening in succession. So it might be one 6.0, what might be one 7.0 or greater, such as up in Japan back in 2011, we saw Japan be preceded by a 7.0 2 days before, the same area. So you can normally expect these super mega quakes are preceded by a flurry of activity that's almost obvious that there's going to be a mega quake coming. And that's preceding swarm activity, which, again, professionals say doesn't happen. They say that, one earthquake doesn't lead to another, that you won't have a 4-shock earthquake that lets you know a 9.0 earthquake is going to be coming within a day or two. Right? I mean, for instance, let me give you an example. 2011 in Hawaii. Again, in Hawaii, 2011, Kilauea drained. Massive volcanic movement all the way around the Pacific, leading up to the 7.2 that happened 2 days before Japan. I did a full earthquake report saying, guys, we need to watch Japan. There's going to be some bigger movement there. These volcanic eruptions are excessive, and if you add in the 7.2 that we just had now, that lets you know we need to watch here. And 2 days later, 9.0 hit. Everybody said you can't forecast an earthquake. Even at the time, I didn't even put 2 and 2 together saying, oh, did I know that that was going to happen? I was just making an educated guess based upon the movement that was happening at the time. As it turns out, over the past several years, those educated guesses have been refined down to an actual forecast method that you can use. Look, we were watching Salton Sea for a specific reason, and Salton Sea got the swarm. We were watching Arizona. Arizona got hit. Watching Texas. Texas got hit. Watching the East Coast. New England. East Coast, New England got hit. All within 2 to 3 days of issuing the watch. The reason I'm watching these areas is because I know they're going to move based upon the other movement that's happening in other regions. So again, you can see this huge cluster right here. This lets you know somewhere inside of this huge cluster, most likely the silent areas that haven't moved yet are going to move. And when they do move, they're going to compensate heavy for this amount of movement that's happening around the rest of the area. Okay? Hope this answers some questions if you have them. And if not, you guys can do this yourself, by the way. You can start paying attention to the earthquakes and make note of where they're occurring and watch the areas to the west or to the east or to the north of them and watch how they move and how they compensate for this amount of activity. Again, the whole West Pacific in the last 48 hours has moved on at least a 5.0 level in succession. Look at these. These are equidistantly spaced, literally from one to the other. And we can turn the rings down. The rings are range rings, again from Earthquake 3D, that just show a possible affected area. But if you take them down and you see, literally, we're talking about boom, 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 boom. The lighter colored they are, the more recent they are. The darker colored, the more old. So these were, roughly 48 hours ago, and these are over the last 24 hours. So 48 hours ago, boom, 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 and then over the last day, boom, 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 back up. That lets you know. One day is moving down, the next day it's compensating back, like a ping pong match of pressure. Oh, okay, guys, be safe. Always have an earthquake plan ready. Be prepared just in case. You may never have to use it, but if you do, you'll be happy you're prepared. You'll be the only one on your block who most likely is.